Hey everyone, we're going to do a video today on shading in Desmos, and there are going to be some tips and tricks for getting things to shade correctly. So um, to start off, just some basic shading, right? We've kind of already gone through where you can do something like this, right? Where it's just say X on the left, X on the right, shade all the X's in between. So we've kind of talked about that where that's like this green section where I'm just like, here's my function on the right, here's the one on the left, shade everything in between. And that works sometimes pretty well, and sometimes it'll leave little gaps, like this little blue gap right there. So we want to try to avoid that. Now, you do have the option, you can just kind of try to fill that in with another function or another x's between this and this type of thing. But sometimes, maybe I didn't define this function in terms of x. Maybe I defined it in terms of y, and then there's a little more work involved. So sometimes that's not always ideal. But I could, with the proper techniques, just shade in that whole thing, one color, one line, without having to do two separate things. So we'll kind of go over how that goes. To start, you can, think about this in this way. I'm going to shade everything below this top line, which right now I'm calling right mid-arm, because that's kind of the line in the middle of the arm on his, as I'm viewing it, the right side, right? So his right arm, right, everything below that midline that's right there, I just want to shade it. And so if I do that, I'm going to cut and paste this part right here. That would shade this whole thing, right? That whole thing right there. I don't want that whole thing, right? I still want to stay in between these two guys right here. So I can go ahead and I'm going to paste for a minute that part in. So this right arm stripe 2A, right, is right here. And then I'm going to just cut this out for a minute and put in X, right? Left arm, or right arm, 2B is what I called it for that other side of the stripe. Stripe 2B. All right. So now, right, I should be in between, right? So that's everything lower than this, but in between those two lines. But the problem right there we see is that I have that gap, right? So I don't want that gap. So one thing that you can try is instead of using the name of the function, just go back down to where you named it, right? So right arm strike 2B is this function right here. It has these restrictions, right? And that's what's causing the shading to also have those restrictions, right? So this function on the right does not go above this point right here at 5.9 for the y. And really I'd like it to go up a little bit further. So what I can do is just copy and paste that function right in here, right? So this purple, instead of using the name, I'll just use the function I typed in without the restriction, right? So I'm not using the restriction anymore, which means this right side can go up as far as it wants. And now I'm only restricted by the height of the left side because I'm still using that right arm stripe 2A in that function, and it'll restrict it to that and also that top. So sometimes just copying and pasting instead of the variable name, the actual function, right? So right in here, instead of that right arm stripe 2B, I'm just copying the function in without the little restrictions that I had on it. And so that'll allow it to go up further and get all the shading that I want for that guy. So that is one trick that you can try, is rather than using the names, just use the actual equations in that restriction on your inequality. The other one that we'll talk about is this yellow piece over here. So that yellow piece I have kind of down here, and we'll talk about each of these two separate parts. So I'm going to go ahead again and kind of cut and paste this part right here. So what I'd like on this one is to stay between, right, this part, this top arm and this mid arm line that are right here. But the problem is if I put in, and then also between this curve on the left and this line on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and put in this other inequality. All right, so if I had, again, that was called x, right mid-arm. All right, I think that's, oh, that was y right mid-arm for that guy. You'll see this little triangle with the exclamation point. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you what the problem is. So this says, we only support solve double inequalities. Try deleting one side of the inequality. So essentially on this double inequality, right here, we got two sides, right, where y is between this and this. It doesn't like also having these extra inequalities with it. So the solution, right, is to delete one side of these, whichever side you want. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to delete that left side, and that'll mean that we have everything below this top line, right, and all the x's that are to the right of this equation right here, which is this straight piece right here, but unrestricted, right? So I'm just going to delete that part right there. All right. Now it'll shade sort of what I want, right? So it'll shade everything below this line, everything to the right of this sideways parabola, and everything to the left of that line. So that's included in this this part right here. X's have to be bigger than this parabola right here, and we're already restricted on the right by that line, but I could even do like a x's between that and 15, which is where that line is located, or something like that if I want to. So if I wanted to say that parabola less than or equal to x, less than or equal to 15, that would be okay. The double inequalities are allowed in these restriction parentheses, those curly braces, just not outside of those as your initial thing that you type in. So double inequalities, okay inside the curly braces, not okay outside of them. But we still want it right above this kind of mid-arm line that's right here. We would like it restricted above that. So all you have to do is add in a new restriction. So you're allowed as many restrictions as you want to put in. So we're going to say x also needs to be above, right? So also above, greater than or equal to this y, right? And this was our right mid-arm, right? So right mid-arm. And that needs to be a y greater, not an x greater. So y greater than that line, right? And now restrict it, right, just to everything. There's this long line right here, everything above that. So that is one way that you can get sort of four-sided restrictions, is use one restriction for your y's, right, on the outside, your double restriction on x's on the inside, and then another restriction for y inside a separate curly brace section that's right there. So that'll give me kind of my four walls for this shading area that's right there. You can also do x's on the outside, y's, double y in the inside, and then another x over here. So however you want to build your walls, y first or x first, doesn't matter, but you just can't have the double restrictions on the outside. You can have the double restrictions on the inside. And notice here, I put the equation of this one rather than the name because I want it to go kind of the full length, and I'll use these y's as my restrictions rather than the bounds of that line, because I want to get this lower part way down here. That's kind of below where that parabola is going to end as far as just the line goes. All right. So hopefully all that made some sense. If you got questions about it, feel free to let me know. If you're struggling with shading any part of your graph, you can also ask me for some tips or show me something you've tried that's not working, and I can try to suggest something that might help. All right, that'll do it for this one, and we'll see you on the next one.